The Torah tells us in Parshas Kiteitzei Dvarim Chaf Hei that if a man is married and he dies without children, his wife falls for Yibum to his surviving brother. And we'll see if there are many brothers, which brother gets the first dibs for the mitzvah of Yibum. If the brother or the brothers are not interested in Yibum, the Torah goes ahead and says Chalitza. Now, what's unique about the mitzvah of Yibum from the perspective of Arayas is that when Shimon, the surviving brother, marries through Yibum, the wife of his late brother Reuven, he's marrying what's called Eshes Achiv. And Eshes Achiv is an erva, but the Torah says for the sake of the mitzvah of Yibum, we're going to trump the erva of Eshes Ach. However, the Mishnah says, there are 15 categories of arayos. Now, what happens here is that in addition to the Eshes Ach erva, which is always built into Yibum by definition, where Shimon the Yavam is marrying his late brother's wife, what happens if Shimon is related to his late brother's wife, called the Yevamot, in one of 15 possible scenarios? And now we have an overlap of two arayos. So when the wife of Reuven falls for Yibum to Shimon, she is not only Eshes Achiv, but she's also one of the other 15 arayos that we're going to see are enumerated here in the Mishnah. And although the Torah was matir erva in Yibum, only Eshes Ach, that's the only erva that the Torah permitted. But if there's an overlap of any of the other arayos, 15 in number, then the Torah did not permit Yibum. The Torah did not overlook that erva, that prohibition, for the sake of the mitzvah of Yibum. Our Mishnah adds the word tzara. Tzara means that Reuven had two wives. One of these two wives was an erva of one of these 15 arayos to Shimon. The other wife that he married was not an erva to Shimon, but nevertheless, both of these wives fall for Yibum. That's the key term here, nefila liyibum. They fall for Yibum with Reuven's death to Shimon. Again, Reuven died without children. And since one of them is knocked out of Yibum because of erva, one of the 15 arayos, that knocks off the other wife, even though she's not an erva. So Reuven had two wives. Let's call it Rachel and Leah. They're not sisters, right? Rachel and Leah. Rachel is an erva to Shimon. Leah is not an erva to Shimon. Leah now is also knocked out of Yibum simply because she's a tzara, she's a co-wife to an erva. Okay. So now the Mishnah says that Chameshes Noshim Potros Tzoroseyim, and then we have Tzaros Tzoroseyim. We'll discuss that in the end of the Mishnah, Mitzvah Shem. Min hachalita umin hayibum ad sofa olam. So what this means is that in the case of an erva, she doesn't fall for yibum or for chalitza. She's not included in yibum. She doesn't need chalitza, which means that with the death of her husband, she can get married to any man she wants to, including a Kohen. And she doesn't need chalitza. Why? Because she's not at all included in the entire mechanism, the entire parsha of Yibum. And the same halacha is going to apply to the tzara and to the tzara ad olam. No Yibum and no chalitza. And we have to emphasize this point from the get-go because throughout the Masechet, we're going to have many, many scenarios in which, although there's no possibility of Yibum, but nevertheless she requires chalitza. But that's not our Mishnah. Our Mishnah establishes Tura min hayibum umin chalitza. So there's no Yibum and there's no chalitza. Who are these 15 arayos? So let's run through the 15, and then if we have time, we can go through scenarios and give names. In my Gemara, the Masechet, there are many, many diagrams here. So what we have is Bito, Bas Bito, Bas Bino, Bas Ishto, Bas Bina, Bas Bita, Chamoso, V'em Chamoso, V'em Chamiv, Achos Me'imo, Achos Me'imo, Achos Imo, Achos Ishto, Eishes Achiv Me'imo, and we have Chamoso, V'em Chamoso, V'em Chamiv. We have Achoso Me'imo and Achos Imo. We have Achos Ishto, Eishes Achiv Me'imo. And on Beis Amid Beis, we have Eishes Achiv Shalohoya Be'olomo. And finally, it ends up with Kaloso, which is the final number 15. So let's go back and see what we could fill in to explain these 15 arayos. We start with Bito. Now, what Bito means is that, let's say we have we'll try to follow his names here, just maybe it'll make it a little bit easier for us as we go along. We have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven has a relationship with a woman. And from that relationship, a girl is born by the name of Sarah. So Sarah is the daughter of Reuven. Shimon marries Sarah, his niece, who is the daughter of Reuven. So when Shimon dies, Sarah, his wife, falls for Yibum to Reuven, and she is the daughter of Reuven. Not only that, but Shimon had another wife besides Sarah. We'll call her Rivka. So with the death of Shimon, both Sarah, the daughter of Reuven, and Rivka, the Sarah of Sarah, fall for Yibum to Reuven. Not only is Sarah excluded from Yibum because it's his own daughter, but Rivka as well is excluded from Yibum because of the halach of Tsaras Erva. Then we have Bas Bito. Now Bas Bito is just almost identical to Bito, just we add a little bit to the scenario. Again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven has a relationship with a woman, and Rashi insists that it's a relationship out of wedlock, and they have a child, a daughter by the name of Sarah. Sarah becomes a mother to Leah. So Leah is now the granddaughter of Shimon. Again, because Reuven and Shimon are brothers, Reuven has a daughter, Sarah, and a granddaughter by the name of Leah. And Shimon marries Leah, who's the granddaughter of Reuven. So with the death of Shimon, Leah, the granddaughter, who's now the wife of Shimon, but Shimon's gone, falls for Yibum to Reuven. So it's a granddaughter falling for Yibum to her own grandfather. That's called Bas Bito. And another scenario would be Bas Bino. And in this case of Bas Bino, what happens is that when Reuven has a relationship with a woman, she gives birth to Yitzchak, to a male child. And that male child, in turn, fathers a daughter by the name of Leah. So Leah is a granddaughter to Reuven. When Shimon dies, and Leah falls for Yibum to her own grandfather, that's called Bas Bino, the daughter of his son. Then we have Bas Ishto, which means that 1 second. Which means that Shimon marries a woman named Rivka. So we have Shimon marries his brother Reuven's wife's daughter, which is fine. He can marry his brother's wife's daughter, and he did so. And now with his death, when Shimon dies, the daughter of his wife, of Reuven's wife, falls for Yibum to Reuven. That's called Bas Ishta. And then we have other scenarios like Bas Binah, Bas Pita. Again, the same idea, just it came through a son, it came through a daughter. It's a grandson or a granddaughter. I mean, a granddaughter either through a son, a granddaughter through the daughter. Now we have Chamosa. This is number 7 on the list. Okay, what's the case of Chamosa? So Chamoso means the following. You have 2 brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven marries Rivka. Rivka is the daughter of Yitzchak and Sarah. Now Yitzchak dies, and Shimon marries the almana of Yitzchak, who is Sarah. Sarah is Reuven's mother-in-law. So when Shimon dies and Sarah falls for Yibum to Reuven, it's a mother-in-law that falls to her son-in-law. And Chamoso is a very severe Erev. Aim Chamoso. And in this case, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Shimon marries Sarah, and Sarah gives birth to Rivka. V'nisa Rivka bas Shimon v'Sarah l'Reuven. U'meisa Rivka eshes Reuven. Achkach meis Shimon. And that's going to be a case of Aim Chamos. Then we have Aim Chamiv. And then we have Achoso. Now with regard to Achoso, we have Achoso Me'imo. Achoso Me'imo, he has here in the following structure. He says, Yaakov married Leah and had Shimon. Yitzchak marries Rachel and has Sarah. Yitzchak dies. Yaakov marries his almana Rachel and has a child, a son named Reuven. Shimon marries Sarah, who is the sister of Reuven from his mother. And he marries another woman by the name of Rivka. Shimon dies without children, and his wives fall for Yibum to Reuven. So that's called Achoso Me'imo. Then we have, that's number 10 on the list. Then we have number 11 is Achos Imo. Achos Imo is his aunt, what we would say in our parlance, which means Yaakov married Sarah, and they had a child, a boy named Shimon. Yaakov also marries Rachel and has a child named Reuven. Rachel, who is the sister of Leah, and Shimon marries Leah, who's the aunt of Reuven. And Shimon dies without children, and his wife falls for Yibum to Reuven. So that's called Achos Imo. Now we have Achos Ishto. Let's say, for example, 2 brothers, Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven is married, and then Shimon marries the sister of Reuven's wife. So in that case, when Reuven dies, his wife falls for Yibum to Shimon, but Shimon is married to that woman's sister. And Achos Ishto is one of the Arayos, so there's no Yibum. Eshes Achiv Me'imo, it means that Yaakov married Leah and had Shimon. Avram married Rachel and had Yitzchak. Avram died, and Yaakov marries Rachel, the almana of Avram, and has a child by the name of Reuven. Yitzchak marries Rivka and dies. Shimon marries Rivka, his former wife, and Eino Achi Yitzchak lo me'av lo me'em. Now Shimon dies without children, and his wife Rivka falls for Yibum to Reuven, who is Achiv Me'ha'av. There's no Yibum, no Chalitza, because in addition to being Eshes Shimon, which is Eshes Achiv, it's also Eshes Yitzchak, who is Achiv Mina'em. So this Eshes Ach is Asur Mishum Erva, because if it's only Mina'em, there's no Yibum Mina'em. All Yibum depends upon an Achim Mina'ach. And now we turn to the Beis Amid Beis. The Eshes Achiv Shalochaya B'Olama. What happens if Reuven has a brother Shimon, and Reuven dies, his wife falls for him to Shimon, and then Levi is born. So Levi is a brother to the late Reuven, but they never shared life together in this world. That's called Eshes Achiv Shalochaya B'Olama. And the Gemara later on is going to dash in the pasuk, but it says at the beginning of the Parsha of Yibum in Kiteitzei Ki Yeshu Achim Yachdav, and Yachdav means they live together, they overlap. And here they didn't overlap because Levi was born after the death of Reuven, and that's going to mean that the wife of Reuven is not only prohibited to Levi as Eshes Ach, but even if Shimon is Miyabem, the wife of Reuven, and then Shimon dies, and that woman falls for Yibum to Levi, even though Levi and Shimon were coexistent, nevertheless, Levi cannot be Miyabim this woman, because since she was once married to Reuven, therefore she's Eshes Achiv of Reuven. The Kaloso. All right, so Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and Yitzchak, the son of Reuven, marries Rivka. Yitzchak dies. Shimon marries Rivka, the almana of Yitzchak, and he marries another woman named Leah. Now Shimon dies without children. His wives fall in front of Yibum, in front of Reuven for Yibum. And Rivka was the daughter-in-law of Reuven, Kalos. And the Mishnah says, Elu potos soroseyen vitzaros soroseyen and achalitzim na'yibim ad sofa olam. The Kulon. Now, all these arayos that patter up that tzara, that's only because they were alive, any of these 15 arayos, at the time that Reuven died. However, let's say that Reuven was married to an erva to Shimon, but that erva died before Reuven died. So that's the case of Masechet. O Mianu, O Nizgarshu. Well, let's say Reuven had two wives, one of which was an erva to Shimon, but he divorced his wife, who was an erva to Shimon, or she was a katana and she did miyun, and Belinetta will talk about miyun in another sugya later on. Ochenimtu island. So let's say the erva turns out to be an island, and the Torah says that it's got to be lo hakim shem, and there's no hakim shem in the case of an island. She cannot become pregnant. Therefore, she's excluded from Yibum. There's no nefila for Yibum, and Tzarosei and Mutaros, therefore there's no din of Tzaros Erev. Then the Mishnah says, but into islands. the concept of islandess is not going to apply to all 15 arayos, because in certain cases of an erva, by definition, we're talking about a woman who gave birth, right? A mother-in-law, or the mother of a mother-in-law, or in all these cases, she gave birth. So she can't be an islandess. Or she can't be a katana, because we have a principle that the Gemara establishes later on in Daf Yud Beis, that katanos ain't on yoldos, they can't give birth. So those discussions about islandess or miud do not apply to chamoso, or to aim chamoso, or to aim cham. Eitzad potros tzorosein, hoisa bito al achas mikol arayis elu nesus liachim below. And Reuven, the late Reuven, had each acheres is married to someone else. Umeis, and Reuven dies. It changed to bito p'tura l'gamri mina chalitza, just like Shimon does not have to give chalitza to his own daughter. So too kach tzarasa p'tura, he doesn't have to give chalitza to the tzara of bito. Olcha tzaras bito v'niseis li'achiv hasheni. Velo isha cheres umeis is kshem shetzoras bito ptura kach tzoras sarasa ptura. So this is a case of three brothers, and Sarah is married to Reuven. No, Sarah, I'm sorry, is in his scenario is the daughter of Reuven, and she's married to Shimon, and there's another wife. Now the Tzoras Bito of Reuven got married through Yibum to Levi, who's the other brother of the deceased. Hare Nishos Shimon's Kukos Lo Yibum. Kilo Nesru El Reuven, but Velo Isha Cheres Umeis. If he has another wife, let's call her Rachel, and then Levi dies without children, two of his wives fall for Yibum to Reuven. Since Rivka was a tzara of Bito, therefore she patters up even tzaras Sarah. And that's going to be an issue in the Gemara later on between Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai. Bafilu ein mea. Even if there are 100 brothers, the same din applies. Ketzad im mesu tzaraseim mutaros hoisa bito al achas mikol arayis elu nesus liachiv velo isha cheres umesa bito nisgarsha v'akach meis achiv tzarasa muteres. If, on the other hand, the erva died or was divorced, then there's no problem of tzaras erva. The Mishnah concludes by saying, "V'chol hayecholos hayecholo lemoin shalomiana tzarasa choletzes v'lo misyabes." We finally have a case where there's a requirement of chalitza, and there's no requirement of, no possibility of yibum. And B'li Neder will talk about that possibility tomorrow. Okay, then, so we have a head start in Yevamot, which is very good because Yevamot is quite complicated. And I wish you all a great day. Thank you so much.